Today we are going to be solving the Roman to integer problem on LeetCode. It's LeetCode number 13. So this problem is dealing with Roman numerals, which are represented by 7 different symbols: I, V, X, L, C, D, and M. And each symbol corresponds to a value. So I corresponds to the value 1, V to the value 5, X to 10, L to 50, C to 100, D to 500, and M to 1000. How do these symbols come together to create numbers? Well, an example they give is 2 is written as II in Roman numerals because it's just two ones added together because the symbol I has the value 1. 12 is written as XII, which is X plus II since X is 10 and II makes 2, coming together, 10 plus 2, 12. The number 27 is written as XXVII, XX, 10, 10 making 20, plus V adding 5, and then adding II for another plus 2, 20 plus 5 plus 2 makes 27. And now Roman numerals are usually written largest to smallest from left to right, but there's exceptions to this rule. The numeral for 4 is not III. Instead, the number is written as IV. And so because the 1 is before the 5, we subtract it, making 4. And so what this means is that Roman numerals are usually largest to smallest from left to right. But if you encounter a smaller number before a larger number, that means you must subtract it from that larger number. And so the same principle would apply to the number 9, which is written as IX, so 10 minus 1. And now there are 6 instances where subtraction must be used. I can be either before a V or an X to make either 4 or 9. X can be placed before L, which is 50, or before C, which is 100, to make 40 or 90. And C can be placed before 500, or it can be placed before 1000 to make 400 and 900. And so we're supposed to convert a given Roman numeral to an integer. So if we have a method here that takes a string s as a parameter, where s is a Roman numeral, it's easy to see that the solution for this problem is going to involve iterating along s to grab each symbol individually and add them up. The question is whether to iterate from the beginning of the string to the end, or from the end of the string to the beginning. The way we're going to do it in this problem is iterating from the end of the string back to the beginning, because it makes checking for these edge cases much easier. What we're going to be doing within this for loop is first grabbing the character at each of these indices, and then using a switch statement, we're going to determine what Roman numeral that character is, and then update the result sum accordingly. So for characters like M or D, this is going to be pretty simple. You just add the value of M or D to the result. So for M, you would add 1000, and for D, you would add 500. But for these edge case characters, I, X, and C, it's a little more complicated. Because taking I, for example, if I is placed before V or X, it subtracts 1 to make 4 or 9 rather than adds 1. And so what we have to do for each of these characters is within the switch statement, add a check for whether we should be subtracting the value of that Roman numeral or adding the value of that Roman numeral. So the way to check this is because we are going from the right side of these Roman numerals to the left side, if we're on the character I, for example, the sum should not be greater than 5, because if the sum is greater than 5, we know we've encountered a V, in which case the Roman numeral would be something like XIV, where now X is subtracting. And so the check here is if result is greater than 5, then we subtract 1. If not, we add 1. Because if the result is greater than 5, we know we've already encountered a V. The check is the exact same for X or C, just with these larger characters, L or C for X. And so if the result is greater than 50, then we're subtracting the value of X rather than adding it. And for C, for D and M, if the result is greater than 500, we're subtracting the value of C rather than adding it. And although we have a -1 and a 1 here for all of them, notice that we're multiplying it by 100 to account for the larger values of X and C. And so after fully iterating through these Roman numerals, we should have a result that is the total of that Roman numeral, and then we return that result. So let's run this and see what we get. As you can see, we get a very efficient solution both in terms of runtime and memory usage.